over some gaming topics that have been in the news or something important to us, or just what's hot. If you want to ask us questions, if you're watching, even if you're listening, leave us a comment on the relevant social media: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And we'll get back to you. I mean, we might talk about it in the next episode because this is live, or we might just reply directly to a comment on social media. So, Adam, why don't you hit us with your first topic?
Well, before I begin, there's actually two things I want to talk about. Not long, but just mention. The first one is I want to apologize for last week's podcast. I edited the audio, and then when I put it up, I realized that I actually submitted the wrong audio. So I
Oh.
fixed it. So if you're listening on Spotify, it updated it, and you're fine. I'm not quite sure about iTunes, but I do know that Google Podcasts, for some odd reason, at least for me, it hasn't updated it yet, and it's still the wrong audio. So if you were listening on Google Podcasts and you noticed that it was actually a previous episode, I apologize for that. I don't know how to fix it. We're going to try though, but it is the correct version up on Spotify, so you can go check it out there. And the second thing is that actually just yesterday, Red Candle, the guys who came out and made Detention and Devotion and had their game banned, and then it was going to be on GOG, and then it got rebanned again, I guess, basically. Came out with a Twitter yesterday saying that you can now, they are going to have their own eShop on their own website. So if you do want to go ahead and buy the
Oh.
game, you can do that. I actually just did that this morning. So now I have acquired my copy by paying for it as opposed to the free version. So yeah, just wanted to drop those.
That's
All
fantastic
right.
for them.
Yeah, no, it's great news because they keep getting dropped. And so I guess they eventually just said, you know what, we're just going to do it directly ourselves. And yeah, it works out really well for them. So I'm really happy for them. And just wanted to let everybody know. So, all right. But my first topic is the one we kind of left off with last time, where we were talking about game derailment. So when we've seen this a lot recently, where a game gets really hyped up and then just falls completely flat on delivery. We saw this with Anthem. We saw this to a lesser extent with Mass Effect Andromeda, and we've seen it with Bloodborne, or sorry, Battleborn. You know, if you remember that one, a lot of people forgot about that one. But a lot of these games, you know, they get kind of a little bit of hype before they begin, and then they come out, and then they just die. And so the question that I'm kind of want to debate or talk about or discuss is what's really the cause of that? Is it the do you think it's more of the publishers or the developers over promising what they're going to be able to deliver on, or do you think it's more of the fans' fault where we take something that has potential and we just don't want to curse on here, but you know, we poo on it, and then it and then because of that it just kills all hype for it, and then the game basically dies because other people don't get even given a chance. So do you think we're killing it ourselves, or do you think they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot and then blaming us later?
I mean, I think it's like, especially in big studios, and we talked about that in previous shows with Cyberpunk 2077, and that was documented by Jason Schreier and Bloomberg. That when it came to Cyberpunk, the management, the higher ups, not the actual devs or the programmers or the artists or the QA guys, they were like, "Oh, we're gonna release this game on this day," and that's the be all and end all. And when you think about like when PUBG became famous, even before PUBG was DayZ, right? DayZ was before PUBG.
It was yeah, it was originally DayZ, and then PUBG was a mod.
Yes. And I mean, when that stuff became famous, and then the survival sort of multiplayer shooting genre started taking off, and at that time Epic was developing Fortnite, and then so Fortnite was Save the World, and like, okay, we're gonna make this battle royale version, and then that took over, and then people were like, oh my god, Fortnite is doing so well, and people made their own versions, and I think I mean, to sum it up, I think it's basically sort of the higher upper management saying, okay, we're a company, we need to make money, let's make this, without actually having to put in the thought and say, okay, if we're gonna make this, how are we gonna make it unique? How are we gonna make it bring players in? How are we gonna make it special enough so that somebody's gonna want to put down their money? If it's not free to play, and if it is free to play, how they're gonna make them want to buy cosmetics, buy like llamas in Fortnite, which is the loot boxes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I've kind of debated this. Now, what about something like, say, Mass Effect Andromeda, though, where I mean, to an extent, they actually kind of had loot boxes in Mass Effect Andromeda. You could buy some extra
Mm,
stuff, and I think there was loot box stuff for the multiplayer, if I remember correctly. I never played the multiplayer. Maybe I played it once.
I love the multiplayer of Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 and
Three
Andromeda.
had multiplayer.
Yeah.
Yeah, because by the time that I played 2 and 3, the multiplayer was basically dead. I mean, I played it 5, 6, 7 years after release, so there was nobody left there, or maybe there were a few people, but not that I could find. And I could have played it on Andromeda, but I had other things I wanted to move on to, so I wasn't super interested in it. But that's something that kind of comes up too is in Andromeda when they dropped it, they actually dropped everything except the multiplayer. That was the only thing they continued to work on, and they continued to add DLC for multiplayer where they added the Batarian character and they added some other characters, and it was all focused on the multiplayer. Do you think that's part of the problem? Is a lot of these developers now are just, hey, let's look at a long term string of money as opposed to one upfront thing, and because of that, they don't put as much upfront for it? Because say a game like Ghost of Tsushima is designed to be played and then moved on, right? Or The Last of Us. These are designed that you're going to play the game and you're going to move on and you're going to play something else. But in those games, at least Ghost of Tsushima and The Last of Us and those sort of things, they actually are kind of successful and do pretty well. I mean, when we look at games that have really kind of bombed, the only single player one I can really think of is Cyberpunk. Most of the other ones have been multiplayer, like Anthem, to an extent, Mass Effect, but Bloodborne and those sort of things where they're just outcompeted by other things. Was it Battlefront 2? Star Wars Battlefront 2
Yes.
was another example of that with the loot box fiasco that we had. So do you think that's part of it? You think it's these companies think, okay, if it's multiplayer, we don't have to have the full product out there to begin with?
Um, I think yes, and I'm still gonna go back to sort of the company sort of modality that has been changing. I mean, as you were talking, I'm like, oh yeah, you make a lot of sense, and I think, you know, gaming, economic models haven't changed, for such a long time, and still maybe until like the last 10 years, where Western companies were looking, at Asia, and I mean, not just at Asia, but I mean, at different ideas to say, okay, we can't just be spend 5 years, commit tons of resources, money, manpower, salaries, all this sort of stuff into a game, make some money later, a ton of money in a short time, and then commit all that money back again to make the second game. And they were like, we need, continuous revenue streams, and just to change their economic model. And they were like, oh, free to play, oh, battle royales, oh, sort of Dota-like, League of Legend-like games, uh, that sort of stuff. I don't know. Can you hear those construction sounds?
I can't hear any now.
Oh, that's fantastic. Because if you're watching or listening, if you hear any sounds, my neighbor is doing something on the ninth floor, and if you do hear it, I apologize. Because usually in Taiwan, if you live in an apartment building, they're supposed to put a notice to say, "Hey, we're doing construction on X day," and they have not done that, which is irritating.
Yeah, and now that I'm actually thinking about it too, in the case of Cyberpunk, even though it was a single player game that failed, it really didn't fail from what people were saying on current gen. It was just the legacy systems and older PCs that had the problems, right?
Yeah, I mean, even still, like monetarily wise, Cyberpunk recouped their development costs. It was the
Right.
biggest launch on Steam ever at that time. So I mean, yeah, I mean, it depends how I mean, for the higher ups, they're happy they made their money. The devs maybe
Right.
not so happy because of what players said.
Do you think we're heading towards another? What was it in the eight? Was it the 80s or the early 90s where they had the games crash or something like that?
What was the games crash?
Yeah, it was where I'm not quite sure. My history's not that good, but it was something where basically a lot of developers kind of went under, and there wasn't a lot of development going on in terms of games. So you had like the early games coming out, like the Atari and stuff, and then there was kind of this lull before the Super Nintendo, and the Nintendo was kind of in there, but then wasn't really, I guess, until the Sega came out, and then suddenly gaming started getting big again. These companies
Ah,
started jumping back in. I'm not quite sure. Don't quote me on that. My history isn't good. But do you think we're heading kind of in that direction with a lot of these developer, or like almost an oversaturation where developers are over promising these things and they're wanting too much money, and we're getting to the point where people might just start losing interest, and because there's just not that those AAA experiences that we've had for a long time?
I mean, I don't think so. I think we've got such a wide variety of platforms, options, consoles, switches, switch lights, and mobiles, of course. It's with especially, I mean, everywhere in the world now, it's really affordable to get a phone with a nice screen and a big screen, 6 inches and up, for a really good price. And with that phone, you've got a nice, pretty good chipset on the inside, good amount of RAM. You're gonna be playing really good looking games, and I mean, not to mention, Kickstarter as well. Kickstarter is still raring hot for video games and new releases and developers. New developers always get that chance to say, okay, I'm gonna put a good idea up, or even not a good idea, an okay idea, and they're still gonna get lots of money. So I think there's still lots of room to grow. I mean, what about you?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think it'll be fine for a while, but I do get kind of concerned with the way that, like, as we move towards, we've seen more free models like Genshin Impact right now, where a game is free and then they add updates and stuff like that, and then they go into these loot boxes and stuff like that. And I do worry that it's going to kind of move in that direction where the games are going to be more focused on, they're going to be more like casinos, where entry is free. We'll give you this, like you go to a casino and you can eat for free, right? Because they want you to stay.
Yes.
Or they have like a super cheap buffet, so that because they're not making money on the buffet, they're making money on your gambling. So I wonder, I do worry that there's going to be more of that, where they kind of give you this just enough to get you in, but then the real thing are these kind of the hooks that get into you, but there's not, they're not focusing as much on the gameplay or things like that. They're focusing on just out competing people, and making sure the cash is coming in and making sure the money's coming in, and that's the priority. Not, I mean, granted, it's a business, that's kind of always a priority, right? uh,
True.
but I do kind of worry that they move in that sort of direction where we start seeing more things like that. So, and then now too, with things like Game Pass and those sort of things, uh, yeah, just the money is, there's going to be less money floating around in the market from the consumer. I mean, if these companies want to pay out. That was one thing that I saw recently, with people were talking about Xbox bought Bethesda, and now it's complete. And then Phil Spencer came out and he said, these games will be available anywhere there's Game Pass. And the way he worded it basically kind of sounded like, hey, PlayStation, if you want these games, you can have them, but you have to allow Game Pass on your consoles. And I saw a comment where somebody pointed out that that's just not a feasible thing, because PlayStation already sells, or Sony already sells the PlayStation at a loss. The idea has always been sell your system at a loss, make it up later in game sales. And Xbox has been doing the same thing, that for a long time. That's why you can have these relatively super powered computers, basically, for cheaper than what it would be to manufacture or to build one yourself. But the thing is if PlayStation allowed for Game Pass and people are playing on Game Pass, unless Xbox is giving some of that Game Pass money to PlayStation, PlayStation is just taking, they're selling the system at a loss, and they're not making the money back in games. So it just wouldn't be business. It wouldn't be feasible to put Game Pass on a PlayStation unless they had some sort of deal out with Microsoft saying, hey, for every game on Game Pass played on a PlayStation, we get X amount of dollars. Which might be possible. I don't know, but
Maybe that's just sort of the end game of Microsoft, to bully Sony out of that sort of
I mean,
streaming downloading market.
yeah, no, that's, I've seen people saying that Microsoft is very forward thinking in that regard, where they've been talking for a long time about, this is the last console generation. This is the last console generation. And, streaming is the future. And it seems like they're really positioning themselves in such a way that they're going to, consoles will be relatively obsolete. And if Sony doesn't adapt, then I don't know, maybe they'll have to go the way of Sega and just purely be developers or something.
Maybe. It's very. I mean, did you see the news? I mean, Game Pass related. Outriders on Game Pass when it comes out day one.
Is that confirmed?
Confirmed
I
as
saw the
of this
rumors.
morning on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because yeah, a lot of people were assuming it was going to be Outriders, and now yeah, and that's the thing is Outriders is a brand new game. You know, they're going to be losing out on all those Xbox sales.
Uh, they,
So
they don't need to. I mean, that's the forward thinking, as you said.
I guess, but yeah, for people can fly. Yeah, that's yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're selling loot boxes and stuff down the line, the idea is to get people playing the game first and then get, make your money on these loot boxes. And that's another thing that kind of concerns me is are people going to start moving in that direction where they're like, "Hey, let's put the games out on these things and then sell the game itself as a loss and then make up money later with loot boxes and whatnot." But I don't know what the plan is going to be with Outriders, if it's going to be DLC or loot boxes or what. I don't
I
know.
mean, I think it's a lot of. I think what gaming will become. I don't know if you agree. Is sort of very generational or sort of demographic in the sense that if you're in this age group, sort of 10 to 20, you're maybe let's say 7 to 15, you're asking mom and dad to, hey, mom, can I get some Robux for Roblox? And I mean, that was the other big gaming news, right? Is that the Roblox company, they had their IPO, made tons of money, uh, and that was great for them. But I mean, they're another big sort of gaming system, and I have so many students who play Roblox. It's just uncanny. And Roblox toys here and Toys R Us, and Roblox is such a big thing and such a mechanism for English in a sense for quite a few of my students as well. Um, but yeah, no, and then you have those guys, then you have the sort of the teenagers who are playing like Free Fire, who are playing like PUBG on their phones. I have a student on Friday, he plays PUBG during break times, and his dad gives him money to buy whatever the hell people buy in PUBG, I don't know.
I have no idea.
On mobiles, and loads of sort of that. Here they call them junior high school and senior high school students. They do that sort of mobile gaming, and they get like money to buy food, and sometimes just don't buy food and buy gaming money, and that's what they spend. Then they get the people who just finish university, and in Taiwan salaries are kind of low, so they'll buy like one game a month or maybe no, one game every few months, and then as you get older, you're like, okay, I don't want to pay for this sort of microtransaction stuff. I'm gonna switch to the Kickstarter stuff. I'm gonna switch to the indie developers, and I'm not really looking for AAA games. Maybe three, four AAA games a year, but I'm looking for those sort of shorter experiences without any of the extra stuff or the danger of pay to win or anything like that. And then as you get older, I think all of the time sinky games become less and less for us, and that sort of shifts to the younger demographic.
No, I agree. Uh, and that's one of the things where I agree. I wish I didn't because to me it seems dystopian, and it's like one of those you stupid kids, you're ruining our games, kind of thing. But I agree. I think it's moving in a direction that I don't particularly like, but it's not about me. It's about the market, and I think the market is shifting in a direction that is going more to these free to play and uh, cheaper games, but they can hook you in for longer and more of that.
I don't think it's shifting. I think it's just sort of changing. It's just sort of realigning, I guess, is a better word. It's like I don't think we're gonna be at a loss for games in the future where there are so many free to play games. Uh,
No.
yeah, I think it's just means is that some people are gonna be playing those free to play games, but we'll still have and I still think an extensive choice of uh, double A, whatever those are, or triple A games and indie games to choose from. I mean, and with PC, PlayStation on your side, and Switch, PC, mobile on my side, you mobile, of course. Well, we won't have a shortage of stuff to play for the foreseeable future.
No, there's always going to be something to play. I just
Yeah.
worry about is it going to be as enjoyable. But maybe that's nostalgia speaking too. Maybe you always look back and things look better than they were. So,
Then I have a question. What's your most enjoyable game you've ever played?
uh, probably Sims 2.
The Sims 2, really?
I played that for years. I played that for a super long time. I played it I played that game for maybe 5 years, and the only real reason I stopped was because I got married, and just because when I would do it, I would pop on the TV and I would just play Sims while I was watching TV or whatever, watch Futurama and play Sims simultaneously, and then yeah, and it was just super relaxing and super kind of zen for me, and I loved it. And then when I got married, you know, being like, hey, have fun. I'm gonna go to the other room and play some Sims. Wasn't really a thing, so I kind of stopped off on it. But yeah, maybe Sims 2 as far as enjoyable. Otherwise, the big ones would be like Super Smash Brothers that I would always play with my friends. Mostly like social games like Super Smash or Bushido Blade or that sort of thing.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, if I had to say, I'd probably go with The Sims.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So you want to do your topic?
Sure. Let us go into that since we went off in various directions on the bandwagon topic.
We did, but we can loop back around. It looks like one of yours is kind of similar with the.
Yeah, it is. Ah, it was just So the idea for this topic, if you guys know what this is Raid Shadow Legends on mobile, on PC as well if you've got an emulator. One of his streamers I watch, Kriparian, he's a Hearthstone Battleground streamer, mostly, and quite a famous guy, lives in Canada. And he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna play Raid Shadow Legends." After I was like, "Wow, I mean, Raid Shadow Legends is quite a divisive game and pretty much hated by a lot of people just because it is pay to win." But that guy was like, "Yeah, I know," and he said it very like directly. The guy is super honest on stream. Whether it's a paid supporting advertisement, that YouTube has those things, and hopefully one day we'll be able to get one of those. But yeah, and he was like, "Yeah, cool, give it a try." I'm like, "Oh," because I've always wondered. I mean, I've looked at this, right, and I have a new phone. It has the latest Samsung screen, double two times or double AMOLED screen, so lovely, vibrant colors, looks amazing. It is far better than this 4K screen in front of me or my iPad screen as well, in terms of color and saturation and the blacks and stuff. And I played it. I'm like, wow, this game looks so beautiful. And I think I've had it for like 5 days or 6 days already. I'm like, wow, actually pretty good. So, um, what I wanted to talk about today is how sometimes pay to win games can be fun. Uh,
Oh yeah.
do you want to take that, go with that, Adam? I mean, tell us your experiences.
I don't play too many pay to win games. Actually, I'm kind of against them. But I mean, any game can be fun, and it's definitely one of those things where okay, like you said before, one of your biggest things about a game is the power fantasy, right? And if you
Yes.
don't have that power fantasy, you don't enjoy the game as much.
Yes.
Pay to win is designed around that power fantasy, right? You put more money into it and you get powerful and you can kind of rock everyone's world and whatnot. So I can definitely see the appeal for that and how it could be fun. And I think in some cases too, it depends on how competitive of a person you are. I think if you're more of a casual player, then you know you can have fun as long as you don't take it too seriously. If you're more of a competitive player, I could see where a game that's pay to win could be extremely frustrating because it would feel like everybody else is cheating in a way if you're
True.
not paying to win. But if you're more of a casual player and you don't really care about it, you can kind of brush it off and be like, that guy, he's, it's not that he beat me, it's that his money beat me.
Yes.
Um, and so
That's
I
a very
and
good point.
right, and I think you could still have some fun with it too. I think it depends on the game. I mean, nobody wants to be completely raffle stomped all the time to the point where you can't do anything. Uh, but yeah, I don't see why it couldn't be fun.
Let me ask you, and I mean, that's what I think. I think a lot of these sort of pay-to-win microtransaction games get a bad rep. Um, as a long-time gamer, both of us, do you think there's a way these kind of games, I mean, Hearthstone's in the same sense, Warframe's in the same sense, I wrote that in my show notes. Um, a lot of these games get a bad rep because, new guys get in and they're like, wow, look at this guy I just played against in Hearthstone. He has all these cards. Or in Warframe, and Warframe, is 90% PvE, and they play with these guys like, man, this guy has this gun and this gun and this gun. I'm never gonna get that, and some people feel disheartened. I mean, how do you think, as a developer in current games and future games, you can avoid this kind of sort of feeling?
Hmm. I mean, if you can have alternative ways to acquire things, like in Warframe, you can trade things in game, right? So people can trade things for real world currency basically in game. Like if I have something and you pay the real world currency, I can give you that and you can trade it back, right? If I remember correctly. Isn't that how
Uh,
people were getting primes and stuff?
in Wolfram you can trade, but not for. Oh yeah, you can trade for real currency. Oh God, I forgot. Yes, 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 that's right.
And I know in like World of Warcraft, you can pay for your account in gold. So, for example, if you're earning a lot of gold in game, you can use that to pay for your account. So you can kind of submit that. So I think if you have a method for that, where because I think the biggest thing about the it depends on the game, but I think a lot of times pay to win is a lot about time. So you have a lot of these guys who don't have the time to invest in this game and really develop these things, and so those guys, compensate for time by using money. People who don't have
Exactly.
money can put in the time to go out and harvest these things. So I think as long as there's that kind of trade-off where if it's one of those things where you buy like a special gun in a game and that's just a really powerful gun and the only way to get it is by paying for it, I don't think that's a good system. But if it's one of those things where you can farm for materials to get this gun, whereas you could just say buy the materials using the real world money, I think that's maybe less problematic because then people who don't have the money can invest a little bit more. Have you seen it's a picture and it shows like a teenager, an adult, and like a senior citizen, and they have three bars and it says time, money, and energy. And the teenager has high energy and high energy and high time but low money, and the middle-aged guy has high money, high energy but low time, and the old guy has high time, high money, and low energy. Hey, Vishal.
This is the same guy from yesterday.
Yeah, same guy from yesterday and the day before, or last
Ah,
week.
okay,
He's
cool.
he's the guy who told me about was it Free Fire? But
Ah,
yeah, but I think it's kind of like that, where you have your teenager who has more time, or I mean, not if you're a Taiwanese teenager, you probably have way less time. But I think as long as there's a way to acquire that somehow in game, I think it's okay. Uh, so you know,
okay.
we don't know which part though.
Yeah, no, I mean that's very, very interesting in the sense, and like you mentioned about Warframe. I remember, I mean, the last time I joined was probably about a year ago. Got back into Warframe, and I just was like, because I mean, I think whenever I go and I ended up spending like maybe $30, and I buy some like a platinum, which is Warframe's sort of real world in-game currency that you pay with real money, and I just go around and all the young guys or guys with lots of time who go and farm stuff, and I'm like, oh, uh, and there's a trading channel and they advertise I have X, Y, and Z, and you just join their clan for a little bit, go to their trading hub, you're like, give me that, I give you this platinum, and then I usually pay a little bit more because I'm like, it's I don't have time for this stuff anymore, so take my money, give me the stuff, why not? And I mean, that's kind of cool in Warframe to a sense, but I think, I mean, what do you think about reputation management? I feel like a lot of these games fail poorly in communication and communicating with players and saying, hey, we know these are the issues, but actually you can do this in this way, or you can do this in this way. This is actually not this way, but if you're this player, you can do this. Like, there's loads of options. Uh, and Raid, I don't know because I just started, but in Hearthstone, in Warframe, to get the stuff that you want to. And again, to remind players, actually, I mean, Raid is a PvE game. Hearthstone is PvP, but Warframe is a PvE game. There's nothing to be jealous about, or I mean, everything you can get, you can just grind and get it eventually, or trade and get it. And uh, I feel like communication is something a lot of free to play games fail in.
I think that you just need really good community managers. I know that a lot of gaming companies now will hire community managers, or they'll hire like somebody that's in charge of their Twitter feed or that sort of thing. And I think having a person who's really good at that and really does engage with their people, I think is just crucial. And I know a lot of companies, they have the idea of a community manager, but they actually don't communicate that often. And when they do, they tend to be more in defense of the company. So they seem to be more like damage control than actual liaisons to the community. And I think you do need kind of a liaison who's kind of on the community side on some things, and they're going to say, okay, next time we have a meeting, I'm going to bring this up for you guys. And I think you just having somebody who's dedicated to that. But back to your previous question, when you were talking, it kind of gave me an idea. I think an interesting solution would be something, for example, if you had, say you wanted something and you need multiple resources, some of those resources can only be bought with real world currency. Some resources can only be mined in game, and then have some sort of market where people can trade. So for example, if you're somebody with a lot of time, you end up doing a lot of, say, mining for ore or something. So you have this surplus of ore, you can put some of that ore on the market, trade it for the real world currency, and then combine, what ore you keep with that real world currency to buy things. Whereas people who don't have time, they can pay money for this resource, and then they can buy it on the market off the people that have time to collect the resource. I think something like that would find a balance between the people who have time and the people who have the money, where you can either spend it gathering the resource, or you can just buy it off the people who have it. I think something
True.
like that might be a solution. I don't know any games that have done that, though. That might not work. Maybe that's why nobody's done it. But yeah.
Okay.
But I try to avoid pay to win games myself, just because, yeah, I'm not going to put in the time investment. And for my rule, if I am going to put money down on a game, I'm probably going to put down, say, as much money as the game would have costed anyway. So I would have, say like, okay, I'll never spend more than $60 on this game. But then for me, because I'm always the guy that like, oh, this looks really nice, I could buy this, and I'm like, oh, but maybe something nicer will come up later, and I'll have already spent all my money by then. So maybe I should not spend my money now, and then ultimately end up spending nothing. Uh, but that's me. So
And when I say, pay to win and sort of that sort of stuff is, I think at our age, when I put money, I'm not going to put money down anymore. I think I haven't put money down for this kind of games probably since two years ago. But and I think it's just for me, I'm like, oh, cool, we have decent stuff at home or tablets or phones, and I'm like, oh, I want to get something that's going to make use of all this hardware. And Jesus, Raid just lives up to it. Wow, absolutely detailed and gorgeous and colors and powers. It's beautiful.
I always hear people talking about Raid Shadow Legends, and I always hear people talking about how annoying their commercials are. But here in Taiwan, I've never seen one.
I
So I've
see them all the time on
really.
YouTube, on YouTube in Taiwan, Taiwanese YouTube, I should say.
Oh, I never see Raid Shadow Legends. I always get Uber Eats.
Ah, okay.
I don't know
I mean,
why.
you mean on regular TV or on YouTube?
YouTube. I always get Uber Eats. It's like every single time it's Uber Eats. I
Oh,
don't
see,
know
I
why.
rarely get Uber Eats anymore, but I do get. I see that, and I've always feel the Raid Shadow Legends commercials are funny. I like them.
Okay. Yeah, I've never seen any of them, but I always hear people talking about them. So yeah, I don't know.
Okay. All right, and let's say goodbye to pay to win and go on to topic. Oh, that is definitely not that one. This
Entitled to
one.
style. Yeah.
So what is
So
this
basically,
about?
okay, yeah, I specifically went out of my way to make this as vague as humanly possible. So this kind of came up when I was playing Windbound, and I thought about it, and I also thought about games like Destiny. I was originally going to use a picture of the loot cave from Destiny. Outriders is another example where they patched it, but the idea was, so you can see here, there's a pair of pants with holes in it, and there's a pair of pants with patches, and the question is, should I be forced to wear one pair, or should I have an option of, if I want to wear pants with holes in them, should I be allowed to? That's a fashion choice, right? You see a
Okay,
lot of that.
okay.
And so basically, what really made me think about it, though, was Windbound, because Windbound, when I first played it, it had already dropped the first two DLCs, which were really patches. And then while I was playing, they dropped the third one, and there were certain things because now I'm doing the trophy hunting, and one of the trophy hunting things is things like, don't use ranged weapons, don't use anything higher than a stick, don't kill any pigs, eat plants, vegetarian, don't eat any meat, only eat meat. These are the challenges. And when the first two patches dropped, they didn't, they just added kind of some things to the game, but they didn't significantly make it more difficult. But one of the things in the third one, they added these boss fights, they added these ghosts. And because of that, it just ramped up the difficulty. And now that there's a boss fight, it used to be you just find your 3 towers, and then you go to the end, and then you move on to the next chapter. Now there's a boss fight. And that's making, this patch has made for me trophy hunting way more difficult than it would have been had I done this 4 months ago or something. Okay? Because I could have just completely bypassed these enemies. They have this thing called loathing where they hit you and it puts kind of it takes up part of your health bar, so you cannot heal beyond that point. Because you have to fight these things, it takes longer, which means you're going to lose more hunger. And it's harder to navigate certain islands because now you have to avoid ghosts and that sort of thing. And so I was thinking, should you have the choice to go back and play, the previous version if you wanted to, and should I be allowed to go trophy hunting on the previous version, or should I be forced into this updated patched version that makes it more difficult? Because if somebody picked up the game now, they're going to have a much harder time than somebody who picked up the game on release. And that also kind of reminded me of Destiny, where Destiny had the loot cave. Were you aware of the loot cave?
Very famous. I've heard it. Of course, I never played it, but I've heard it on so
Okay.
many times on different podcasts.
Yeah, so for people that don't know what the loot cave is, basically some players found this spot where you could stand far enough away that there was a cave and enemies would spawn in this cave and they would run out. If you were standing too close, they won't spawn. But if you stand far enough away, you could use, say, a scout rifle or a sniper. And as the enemies ran out of this cave, you could just pop them in the head and kill them because they were relatively low-level enemies. Well, because these enemies would spawn relatively quickly, you could just keep popping them until you ran out of ammo, go to the cave, collect all your ammo. But because you're killing, if there's, say, a drop rate of 1%, you can kill, in an hour, maybe 300, 400 guys. So there's a chance that you would have gotten, 4 legendary items or something like that an hour or whatever. And so people were finding that this was the most efficient way to get loot, because otherwise you could, fight a boss that might have a 5% chance, but you'd have to do an entire strike to do that. And that entire strike could take 15 minutes. So, you're doing 15 minutes for a 5% chance, or you're spending 30 seconds for a 1% chance. So clearly the 30 seconds is a much better deal. So people were doing this to get good loot. And Destiny or Bungie patched it out, and it's one of those things where a lot of people were saying, well, yeah, it's problematic because people are getting good stuff way too easily in the game. But at the same time, are they really playing the game? Like, they're not enjoying it. Or if they are, that's fun for them. I mean, that's like what's the name that's big, the game that's big now? Click the Box or something like that all my students are talking about.
What the hell is click the box?
I don't know. There's some kind of game, and you just click a box, and as you click it, it drops money, and you use the money to buy better things to click the box faster.
Oh, it's like a clicker game. Oh, I didn't realize that was the
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah, and so should people be allowed? So basically, the question: should people be allowed to play the game they want to play it, or should we be required to play the game the way the developers feel that it should be played?
Okay. Oh, Jesus. That's a very, very good question. And I think that comes down to like demographics. Like, I mean, having played, I did play Destiny 2 with you. Did we play Destiny 2 together?
Yeah, we did.
We did. And I played Division 1 and Division 2. And I think probably for me, the experience of the idea of looting and min-maxing builds and stuff was the greatest in the Division. And for some, I would say a lot of, I don't know how many people actually, but lots of people, loot and looting and min-maxing your gear is a big thing. And I think that's what developers cater for them to, to say, hey, this is the way we want you, and that's why people remove things like the loot cave. They remove like in the Division 1, the Dark Zone was a big thing. And if you've never played the Division, the Dark Zone was the only zone in the game where PvP happened. And it was famous. I hated it because I don't have time to play and fight against other people and die, because in the Division, in the Dark Zone, if you that was the best place to get the highest end loot, the best sort of gear. If you had to do PvE, you could get similar stuff, but it would take much longer. And people love the Dark Zone, but I've, and that was sort of catering to one group of players. But the PV guys are like, this is not fair. This sucks. So in the Division 2, they decreased the importance of the Dark Zone, and all the Dark Zone people were like, this sucks. How could you guys do this to us? This we're not playing this game. This ruined our experience. And I don't think this is going to be a Division 3 because of that fight between the catering to the PvP and the PvE guys, and like you said, playing games both ways. I think if you're a developer, you're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. You can make everybody happy.
Okay, now that makes a lot of sense in a multiplayer game because obviously you have to balance it somehow. You know, and that was a problem with Destiny early on as well. Was that PvP? The game seemed to be designed for PvP, so there were things that were really, really good in PvE, and they were really fun, and they kept getting nerfed because they were too powerful in PvP, and that just made PvE feel more grindy and not as much fun. Like you lost a lot of that power trip because they had to balance it for when you're playing other people. So, you can't have that power trip against other people because you have to be on equal footing.
Exactly.
And a lot of people didn't like that. And I get that in a multiplayer game. But what about a game like, say, Skyrim or Windbound? For instance, Skyrim had that glitch where you could, if you jumped a certain way, and I think it was Windholm, you could actually, when you were inside, you could jump out of the thing and then walk around and clip underneath the forge or something like that. And there was a box down there that held the guy's inventory, and you could just loot the box, and it wasn't considered stealing, so you could just clear out his inventory.
Oh man, I didn't hear about that.
Oh, it's so awesome! It's actually really fun to do. It's really cool. But so they had things like that, and obviously later on, they might patch something like that out. Now, in a single player game, you're not affecting anybody else's gameplay. So do you think it's actually okay to leave those things in, or
Oh yeah,
do you
single
think
player for sure. I mean, as
okay?
long as you're not impacting anyone else's gameplay, I
Do you
think.
think they should leave those things in? Because obviously this is clearly an optional thing that you have to go out of your way. It's not a glitch. It's not a glitch that's affecting gameplay. It's just purely a choice thing if you want to find this glitch and do it.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
do you
And
think
for some
okay?
people, people like glitching. I mean, this whole Twitch channels about glitches and YouTube videos about that sort of stuff. So, I mean, why not? That's a thing for some people. I think for me, I was probably interested in that stuff, Jesus, 20 years ago when I was a teenager. And now I couldn't care less. I mean, if someone told me there's a glitch, you can do this, I wouldn't do it just because, I mean, my main goal in the game, I can imagine like you as well, is just finish the game, move on to the next one, get through that backlog.
If it's a fun glitch, I'll do it.
Oh, okay,
Like if you
okay.
if you find a way to fly or something ridiculous like that. Like what was it? If in the Grand Theft Auto 3, they had the Dodo, which was a plane, but it couldn't propel itself in the air. You had to get to speed on the ground, and then kind of hop it, and it could hover. But if you got the tank and you used a code to give the tank the Dodo physics, you
Yes.
could just keep firing out the back of out of the gun of the tank, and it would propel the tank backwards so that you could fly with it. So that was actually the only flying vehicle in the game.
Oh,
So ridiculous things like that. I have a lot of fun with. Now, do you think we should have access to patches in the sense that if a game patches, if they patch a game and people, because sometimes people don't like the way things are patched,
sure.
right? It's kind of a thing you see a lot of people say online right now where they almost are more prioritized with patching out the fun than fixing real problems. So if people find people find a glitch like a loot cave in a single player game and they're doing that, and then there's another glitch that uh, if you do a certain thing the door won't open, and they'll patch the loot cave and not the door, so people that want to do that for fun can't, and people that actually can't finish the game still can't, and so it's kind of killing everybody's fun. It seems to be kind of a prioritize, but I mean it's an easier fix, so that's why they tend to go with that. But do you think people should have the option of rolling back on their patches if they want.
Single player, yes. Multiplayer, no.
Okay, I would agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, because I mean, in multiplayer, like we talked about, I mean, in the previous topic, it does influence it, and there is an aspect of jealousy and sort of desire when you see somebody has all this cool stuff. You're like, oh man, and the guy was like, yeah, I used the blah blah glitch or this thing to get all the stuff, and uh, it kind of sucks, especially if that person was playing at this point, and then you jump into this game as a new player, and you've just got this stuff, and you can't make use of that thing. So
Yeah.
no.
All right. Well, that's mine. Do you want to go on to your next topic?
Sure. My next topic is benefits of playing video games. Because this came to me just because I know I have I mean I grew up and I think I remember Adam said he was not that like your parents didn't really say, hey Adam, stop playing games, go outside sort of thing.
They tried to. No, our thing was we. So my favorite weather is rain. Actually, my favorite weather is snow, but rain is my second favorite weather. And everyone's always mind boggled. They're like, "How can you like rain?" And I think it's a psychological thing because of this. My mom kind of had a policy that if the sun was up and if you had homework, you would do homework. But if you didn't have homework and the sun's up, you should be outside playing or doing something. So basically, we would play games, after the sun went down, or maybe on weekends for a bit. If we had friends over, we could play games a lot more. Um, but otherwise, it was if the sun was up, we'd had to be outside. Which on rainy days, there's no sun, so on rainy days, we could play games pretty much all we wanted.
Okay.
And so that's part of the reason why I love rainy days. It's just stay inside and do stuff. But yeah, she tried to limit it to. I think we were like an hour a day is what my mom tried to limit it to.
During the week as well, during like a school week?
Yeah.
Oh man. That's because now, yeah, when I was growing up, yeah, we had a rule: no video games during the week, only Saturday and Sunday.
Mm.
I think Saturday and Sunday was like an hour each day, and we only had one computer, so we had to split it between. So me and my brother, younger brother, each had an hour each, and my older brother, of course, being older, he could do whatever the hell he wanted. So we'd often sit next to him and watch him play games, because he was 10 years older, and that was always entertaining as well. But and I think a lot of parents struggle with the idea of games and video games and cell phone games and screen time and especially us living in Asia with a lot of kids now in elementary school from 8 years old, 9 years old start having phones and uh, they break out the phones during break time when we have class or they're outside walking around with their phones and playing games or sitting at 7-Eleven playing games is a big thing here. And I wanted to get your take on the benefits of games, how should parents manage video game time and that sort of stuff. I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, none of
Okay.
we're neither of us are parents, but
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
like, I'm not a parent. I do have co-teachers that are parents. I had an opportunity to get a Switch super cheap. I knew a guy who was selling his
yeah,
Switch.
yeah, you told me before.
Yeah. But then one of our coworkers, she has two daughters, and she was like, "Oh, I was thinking about getting him a Switch." And I was like, "Hey, you know what? I know a guy who's selling one for super cheap." So I forewent my opportunity for a Switch because I felt, the kids probably needed it more. I already had PlayStation, and I have my Vita, which I still play. So, uh, but yeah, I think that no, there's definitely benefits to playing games. I mean, the most obvious one is it's a stress reliever. That's the most obvious one right there. Is it's like reading a book or cooking or whatever your hobby is. This is just a way to unwind at the end of the day. I think that's the biggest thing. That said, I think video games is probably a little bit more addictive than certain other hobbies. I don't know if you can get addicted to cooking. I suppose you can get anything could be a psychological addiction.
Mm-hmm.
But I've definitely noticed for me sometimes, like if I go a couple days and I haven't been able to game, I do get grouchy, and I do kind of get irritable because I'm like I just want to play games. So I definitely have that kind of psychological addiction. I know that I do.
Me too.
Uh,
Me too.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. Where I'm just like I just want to play a game. Come on, just give me like 45 minutes. But there's definitely that benefit. I do think it depends on the games you're playing as well. for example, if you're playing a game like Nonogram or Bejeweled or that sort of thing, that's kind of like Sudoku in a way. That's problem solving. So that is definitely, to an extent, some kind of an intelligence builder, like doing a crossword puzzle or something like that. That's something that can kind of get your brain firing. A game like Tetris is a combination of that and speed. So it kind of gets you more into that quick thinking sort of thing. I've heard that gaming can actually increase eye-hand coordination.
Yeah, it's on the chart
Yeah.
next to your head and my
So
head.
yeah, so exactly. So there'll be times where something's like slipping off a table, and I'll just boom grab it real quick, and I don't even think about it until after I've already grabbed it, and it's like, oh, I'm not gonna say that games are why I can do that, but they might be a part of it. Like I might catch things faster when I see something slipping or that sort of thing. So I think that that's definitely important. Um, but again, yeah, there are downsides. Like I've seen multiple news stories of families in they're usually in Asia, but like a Korean couple who plays was playing Maple Story and they neglected their child and the child died.
Oh God, that's terrible.
Yeah, I know. So it can be addictive, but yeah, no, I think overall it's like any hobby where in moderation it's definitely beneficial. And there are educational games. I mean, games like Math Blasters and stuff like that, are great for kids, you know? And I think we do need to focus more on games like that where there's more of a subtle learning curve. One of the things that I noticed when I first started playing, when I first came to Taiwan, I got my PS3, and the first game I got for PS3 was Mirror's Edge. And in Mirror's Edge, it's kind of a combination. It's a future, but in the future, it's kind of like Firefly in that there's kind of this combination of the U.S. and China. Kind of, the Chinese has been a thing. So as I'm walking around, I'm seeing signs like a sign for a door, that would say like stop or exit, but it has the Chinese character for it. And it was simplified. It wasn't traditional, but it got to the point where, I would see these symbols enough that I would start to recognize them. And I would recognize like, oh, this is a door. This door is one that I can't access. This door is one that leads to another area, and so I started recognizing these symbols. It's kind of like if you play a game and you have magical runes, and after over a time, you'll start to recognize this is the fire rune, this is the water rune.
Mm,
It's kind of like that. So I think if you wanted to learn a new language, I don't think putting all the menus necessarily in that language. If you just went full immersion, I don't know how helpful that would be. I think you might just start to memorize where things are and less about reading the symbols.
true.
But I definitely think that language, for example, if you're walking around a map or something like that, and all the street indicators were in French, you'd eventually figure out like this is the word for bus stop, or this is the word for subway, or because you would see them enough and you would
Yes.
need to use them. So I do think that there's definitely a potential for education that would be a huge benefit that I don't think is completely tapped into just yet.
Okay. And I mean, as a highly experienced teacher of 14 years, for parents, I mean, what advice would you give to parents to sort of moderate video game usage? Or, like you said, you had an hour a day when you were growing up. Is that a good rule of thumb for kids now?
I think it's harder now because you have mobile games and stuff like that. And
So, what's a rule you would suggest for parents now as to how to
yeah, it's
moderate
harder.
their kids' video game usage? 30 minutes a day or an hour a day, or does it depend on the game? Or I mean, should parents be sitting next to their kids while they play their games? Or
That last one, I think it's very important that you play games with your kids.
okay,
I think that that is not only going to give you some game time, but I think that's also going to help with the familial the bonds between a parent and a child.
yes,
You know, like yeah, I mean, if you're playing Mario Kart with your kid, A, you can control the time a little bit better. B, you can control what your kid is playing, so you're aware of what they're playing. They're not playing these, other games. And C, it's one of those things where I think you're kind of leading by example because you're showing the kid, like, okay, we've played for an hour. We need to quit. Not just you, but me too. We both need to quit playing this game. And I think setting
very
an
good point.
example like that makes it easier for the kid if you're going to say, okay, the game's done now. Do your homework. And maybe after homework, we can play again or something. So I do think that the parents need to be very involved with what their kids are doing. But one of the things that my wife has brought up when it comes to having kids is that it's getting harder with the internet and things like that. It's getting harder to raise your own kids because kids have access to other families or other lifestyles.
Yes.
And if they see their friends are doing this, they're going to want it too. So if their
Mm.
friends are playing lots of games, it's going to be much harder for you to rationalize why they can only play an hour. If your friend is on Minecraft for 4 hours a day and you have to play Mario Kart with your dad for an hour, like, why can't I play for 4 hours? I'm just kidding. Um, but yeah, I think you just need to have some pretty strict ground rules, and most consoles these days come with parental settings. Make sure you set those, because you can set those to say like this many hours can only be played between this time to that time. These are the games they can play. You can control who they can friend, who has voice chat, and that sort of thing. Definitely spend some time checking out the parental controls and what you can do, and making decisions on what you think you want your child to have access to.
Very, very good advice. Thank you for that.
Oh, no problem. I'm not a dad, so don't quote me on any of this. But
No, no, but I mean, it's a lot of very good common sense that I think. I mean, I've heard from people our age and stuff. Who are like, oh, this person has this person has that. How do I do that? How do I do this? And I'm like, oh, I know that'd be a good thing to bring up today, and maybe make it cut this video and make it a segment and put it on YouTube as well. I think some parents are so busy they're struggling for how to manage the age of kids and phones and switches and that sort of stuff.
yeah, when our co-teacher, when I first brought the Switch over to her, that was the first thing we did, was open up the parental settings and see what we can do in terms of like limiting what they can play and how long they can play and that sort of thing. So,
Great.
and I think one of the things that I think is pretty smart that parents do, I've seen some parents do it, is hide the Wi-Fi password. Don't give your kid the Wi-Fi password. You know, you can save it on your PC because it's a little bit easier to control what your kid's doing on there. But yeah, if they want to use Wi-Fi on their phone, tell them, give me your phone and I'll type in the password. Don't just give them free reign. I think that's a big one as well.
I mean, and then as well, if you have a technical friend like me, you can actually set control or how much control certain IP addresses have from within your router. So you can say this is what this IP can access, and it can not just be if it's a dynamic IP. You can set it to a range or from this DNS, and so you don't even need to worry about Wi-Fi. You can say, hey, this phone can only access these websites, as in, maybe the China Times, the newspaper, or Facebook.com, or probably not Facebook though, but educational stuff. You can control your kids' internet in another way as well.
Yeah, and I think like what Korean was saying, the older brother has a little more access. I think setting those milestones and letting the kid know what they are, saying like, okay, when you're 10 years old, if a kid's less than 10, maybe they don't need to be using the computer that much, but when they're 10, okay, you can use the computer for half an hour a day. When you turn 12, it can go up to 45. When you turn 14, you can get an hour, and then the kid knows that when I reach this age, I think having those in a kid's mind makes things a little more fair because they can see it. It doesn't seem arbitrary. Because
True,
I think
true,
that's one of
true.
the things that really irritates kids sometimes is when you
It's
you make up a
arbitrary.
rule and then you don't follow it, or you switch it up, or you just make a new rule. I think to kids it's kind of like, oh, it just you know. But if you say like, here, look, you can see when you're this age, you get this, and your big brother, you can see he has it because he's reached that age.
Yes.
Um, so things like that, and then also maintaining certain and set realistic goals. Don't be like a tiger mom or a tiger dad, and be like you have to get over 95 on everything. But like, hey, if you can have say a half hour a day, if you can maintain above a 90 average in all your classes, I'll give you an extra 15 minutes. You can get 45. If you get below a 90 on something, I'll knock you back down to 30, but you get it back up. I'll give you those 15 minutes again. If you can get over 95 and everything, I'll give you an extra half hour. And I think that kind of encourages the kid to show that if I can learn more efficiently, if I can study more efficiently, then I can get more game time. And it's one of
Yes.
those things where like, why if the kid's able to get 95s, why does he need to study 4 hours a day?
Hmm?
You know,
Exactly,
if he can
exactly.
study 2 hours a day and get a 95, why make him study for four? You know, like come on, let's be realistic. So I think that would be. I think giving the kids very set and visible rules and conditions, I think is really good.
Okay. All right, and with that, we are heading towards this usual section, the same section we have at the end of every show, where I ask Adam, "What are we going to talk about next week?" And Adam says,
This week, well, we said we were last week. We decided it's going to be Life in Taiwan Part 3.
"Sure." I mean, what are we going to talk about though?
Well, I mean, hopefully people will ask us questions, but if they don't, I had a bunch of questions. You know, questions like, for instance, we have local families. You know, how do you deal with in-laws, that sort of thing.
Okay, okay,
What
okay.
were some of the biggest differences between, what was the biggest culture shock that you've experienced so far, or
Oh, yeah, there is lots of
how
stuff.
are holidays different, or things that people would describe as cultural differences, that sort of thing. Um, some of the, we've been talking about good stuff. We can talk about some of the difficulties that we've had.
Sure, sure, sure,
There's
sure.
definitely hard stuff. One thing that
Difficulties.
yeah,
Yeah, I like that idea.
and one thing that I always thought was interesting was when I first came to Taiwan. It's a modern country like the U.S. or Europe or Canada or South Africa. Just as Japan. We're just as developed as anywhere else. But I was really surprised by the level of superstition that goes hand in hand with this technological advancement. Like in
Yes.
America, we had all these superstitions and we've kind of abandoned a lot of them. But here, you know, you have your neon lights, you have your technology, you have your cell phones, and ghosts
And
are a part of everyday
5G,
life.
yes, 5G and ghosts coincide.
You have 5G, and then and people talk around, so you have that, and then people, but then at the same time, you can't whistle at night because it'll attract ghosts, and that was a kind of a shocker to me, that to see this kind of the tradition and the technology living side by side in a way that we don't see in modern society.
Okay.
So I thought that was really interesting. We could
Cool.
talk about stuff
Okay.
like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now you've just reignited my inspiration for next week.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So, as usual, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, don't forget to hit that subscribe button or follow button or like button. Please do subscribe to us in whatever social media you feel comfortable with. Even if you don't, maybe just bookmark us on your internet browser. I mean, that would be great. Then at least we know you get to sometimes tune in and hopefully catch Adam or me or the stream on Tuesday. The stream on Tuesdays is very, very consistent. Without fail, we're always going to be here 9:45 a.m. Taiwanese time. America just changed their clock, so that will be 9:45 p.m. American time the day before. So today's Tuesday. It's Monday night in America, and you can adjust that.
Eastern.
Yeah, Eastern time, Eastern Standard Time. Sorry. Yes, yes, yes. Um, yep. Please keep an eye out for that. We will be back next week with the Taiwanese episode, as Adam just mentioned. Streaming schedule this week looks good. I will be Thursday and Friday. After Adam's wonderful Free Fire performance, that means I will be back to doing a Hearthstone episode Thursday, and then I'm gonna keep doing Control on Friday because I'm really enjoying that. And Adam, what are you gonna be streaming this week?
Well, tomorrow, Wednesday, I'll probably do Haven again. I believe I'm back to my Haven day. And unfortunately, on Friday, I have to go to the dentist and get some fillings and stuff like that. So this
Okay.
one definitely will not be able to stream on Friday. So
No problem, no problem. Then thank you everybody for watching. We really appreciate it. Some people popping in and out. Vishal, thanks for saying hello again from India. And we will see you guys. Well, I will see you guys Thursday, and then we'll see you guys tomorrow. And
yep.
take care.
See you later.